My wife got karma. Her affair had an incurable STD. They say karma's a bitch, and luckily my unfaithful fiancé got a taste of it. My fiancée Jennifer, F25, and I, M28, have been engaged for over 1 year now. I met her 3 years ago at a family event. It was my grandmother's birthday, and she instructed everyone to invite as many people as they knew. She wanted to have a feast with many people because she was celebrating her 80th birthday. My grandparents are wealthy people. It's the kind of wealth that you cannot really waste. They own a jewelry company, name withheld for personal reasons, that is extremely successful. I believe that one of the secrets to their success is their ability to say no at all times. They are economic people who spend on a budget even with their level of wealth. My parents work at their company too, and they are almost as wealthy as them. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to show off how rich my family is. This is an important part of my experience with my fiancé. Yes, money was involved. A few days to my grandma's birthday, she instructed all her grandchildren to bring at least 5 people to her party. My grandmother has 12 grandchildren, so you can imagine how many people were present. This list is excluding her children's guests, my parents, and their own guests. On my grandma's birthday, it looked like a carnival. There were over 300 people present. It was a party that had a lasting effect on my life. My siblings and I dressed our best because we did not want to disobey her request for us to look presentable. We liked parties, but we just didn't think our grandma could throw a youthful party. I did not look forward to the party, and honestly, I thought it would bore me to sleep. But I was wrong. Very wrong. I still remember how shocked I was when I walked into the hall. It looked like a bachelorette party. The music, food, drinks, lighting, and decor were everything beyond my imagination. My grandma definitely had taste. I concluded that the stingy woman wanted to be generous on her 80th birthday. LOL. There were so many people in attendance that I actually spotted some of my teachers when I was in high school. It was a refreshing night and a surprising one too. After going around and welcoming guests, I decided to mingle with my age group since I was bored of laughing with grannies. Yes, I was bored. My brother Darius asked me to come meet some of his college friends. Darius is just a year older than me. I was in my 3rd year of college while he was in his last. We attended different colleges, so it was nice to meet his friends. That was the moment I met Jennifer. She stood timidly behind her friends and only spoke when she was spoken to. At that moment, I knew she had to be the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She had delicate features, and her calm demeanor only made me drawn to her. Back then, I had my fair share of girlfriends and had dated different women before, but I felt quite drawn to Jennifer. I remember staring at her for a very long time, yet she did not even notice me. One by one, I said hello to my brother's friends, and then I got to her. I asked her what her name was, and that was when she looked up and met my gaze. She looked confused and even turned around to see if I was talking to someone else. When I made no move to leave, she told me her name. I tried making conversation with her, but Jennifer was determined to ignore me. You know that saying, men like to chase? In my case, it was true. The more she ignored me, the more I wanted to know more about her. I did not even pay attention to the party anymore. I was interested in the innocent petite lady that was determined to ignore my existence. Innocent my foot. Darius noticed my actions and pulled me to the side that night. My brother and I are very close, so he could tell that I was attracted to her. I asked him if he was friends with her, and he said no. He explained to me that she was a transfer student who just came to the college. I was quite surprised that she transferred in her last year of college. Darius said they did not speak much since she's always reserved, and that the only reason he invited her was because she was friends with his girlfriend. Darius could already tell I liked her, so he advised me not to force her into speaking to me. I did not have a problem with that. I concluded that if she wanted to speak to me, she would on her own terms. That night, I gave Jennifer her space and proceeded to enjoy the party. After some time, I completely forgot about Jennifer. I had so much fun that I did not think about the girl that grabbed my attention anymore. My grandma later called all her grandchildren for a toast during the party. We grabbed our glasses of wine and joined her on the stage. It was a nice moment because even though the woman is stingy, she loves her grandchildren. The night came to an end, and it was time to escort the guests out and give them their parting gift. I recall seeing Jennifer whisper something to her friend before pointing at me. They seemed to be in a serious conversation. I never really thought about it much back then, but now I understand what that conversation was all about. Immediately after their conversation, Jennifer walked towards me and stood right in front of me. She had a friendly smile on her face as she complimented the party and our hosting skills. I can still remember how shocked and confused I was when she did that. Barely 2 hours before that, she ignored my existence. Why did she suddenly feel the need to come up to me and initiate a conversation? That was the question that ran through my mind at that moment. I am a straight talker and I always feel the need to express how I feel. Back then that night, I asked her why she suddenly came up to me to initiate a conversation. Yes, I asked her that. She laughed it off and said she needed time to get used to the environment before, and that was why she was not responsive. I believed her right away and was back to crushing on her. We spoke for a while before my grandma called for me. I only realized that I forgot to ask for her number when I went to bed that night. I can still recall how pissed off and disappointed I was when I got into my room. I lost the opportunity to ask for her number when I had the perfect opportunity. 2 weeks after that day, something unusual happened. I received a Facebook friend request from Jennifer. I know how that sounds. I should have been relieved that I had a way to contact her, but I was not. It felt strange to me because my Facebook timeline had no real information about me. I used a different name, picture of a car, and just randomly posted anime memes. Not even my own brother could tell it was my Facebook account. I didn't even have any of my family members as friends. I was never a social media person, so I just wanted an account where I could post anonymously. So when I got the friend request from Jennifer, I had to do a double take. It felt quite mysterious. I spent minutes thinking about it before I finally accepted the friend request. What was more strange was the fact that she sent me a message addressing me with my real name. Hi, Ryan. I found it strange, but after some time, I brushed it off. I told myself I should feel grateful that I did not have to go through the hassle of looking for her contact. I could have asked Darius to get Jennifer's number from his girlfriend, but Darius and I had a bro code where we swore never to help each other in dating a girl. This was because none of us wanted to be responsible if the relationship ended up in shambles. Well, mine did. From chatting on Facebook all night, Jennifer and I started calling each other often. We went on friendly dates to get ice cream, and sometimes we'd go jogging together. I liked Jennifer a lot, and so I tried my best to see her every day, even though I was busy. Jennifer was great. She was extremely nice to my friends and family, and she even offered to help my grandma with baking. That was a big deal for my grandma. Jennifer was the definition of a perfect girlfriend with no faults. She was caring and loving. I fell in love with her all over again anytime we met. There were no red flags at all. No red flags or red flags, trust me. As time went on, I knew that I had fallen too deeply for her. Before I met her, I never saw the need to have a serious girlfriend. I was in college and just wanted to have fun and explore. But Jennifer made me fall deeply for her. So deeply that the thought of being with another woman disgusted me. 1 year later, she graduated from college and I got into the final year of college. Jennifer told me she was worried about moving too far away from me for her internship. So I asked my grandpa to pull some strings and let her have her internship in the jewelry store. My grandpa did not think twice before making it happen. He also liked Jennifer and believed she was a good influence on me. A few months later, I began to notice some changes in Jennifer. She would randomly accuse me of cheating for no reason at all. At first, I found it cute because I liked the idea of her getting jealous, but with time, it became annoying. She would stop picking my calls and completely ghost me for weeks. Yes, weeks. I gave her the space she needed and never attempted to go see her at the jewelry store. My grandparents were very strict about work, so I let her be. I did not want to be the reason she did not get a good review. My grandparents are extremely strict. Jennifer took my good intentions for granted and started creating random problems in our relationship. Sometimes she would ask me to send her money so she could buy a new dress and go to dinner with me. After sending the money, Jennifer would switch off her phone and ghost me completely. The fact that I loved her very much made me oblivious to her emotional blackmails. I was raised to be a gentleman, so anytime she cried and accused me of not understanding her, I would feel guilty and try to make it up to her. She made me feel like I was the one making the relationship difficult. 6 months later, Jennifer was back to her normal self and we were happy again. I also graduated from college and began my internship at a hospital in town, name withheld for personal reasons. I also had a side job I was doing that brought in money. Another 6 months later, I proposed to Jennifer. Many people thought I moved too fast, but I honestly didn't care. At that time, we only knew each other for 2 years, but it felt like forever because we saw each other almost every single day. I was just 27 and she was 24, but we were ready to commit on that level. I didn't really plan on getting married soon after our engagement because we still had our careers to pursue. The engagement was the beginning of my problems with Jennifer. The innocent, calm, and delicate girl I fell in love with became this rude, conceited, and violent person. Jennifer would curse at me, ignore my siblings when she came over, and even went as far as rolling her eyes when my parents tried to correct her. My family could tell that I was slowly regretting my decision, and they did not want that to happen. I am a very intentional man. I was raised to be mature and thoughtful. The reason I was so drawn to Jennifer was never solely because of her beauty. I was drawn to her personality, the personality I thought she had. 3 months later, I began to withdraw from the relationship. I stopped texting her regularly, and I even stopped seeing her altogether. She was still regarded as my fiancée, but we did not even hold hands. Jennifer seemed to like development, and she went on with her life. During those months, I focused on my internship and the side job I had. My parents really wanted me to finish well so I could get my doctorate degree early. I was also quite interested in being a doctor and working in hospitals, so I worked harder than ever. 4 months later, I got the shock of my life. That morning, I just finished having breakfast when Jennifer stormed into my room with teary eyes. I was honestly shocked to see her because we had basically lost all contact. I even forgot that I had a fiancé. Jennifer told me she urgently needed my help. Of course, she was my fiancé. I was not going to sit there and pretend she was not. I honestly thought she was hurt, so I asked what was wrong. Jennifer told me her brother, Greg, was really sick and needed urgent medical attention. I was confused. Yes, I was, but I did not have time to be. I remember grabbing my car keys and asking her to take me to the hospital where he was being treated. When I got to the hospital, I allowed Jennifer to lead me to where he was being attended to. The guy that laid on the hospital bed looked quite sick and weak. As a doctor myself, I asked her if he had gotten tests done yet. Jennifer told me the doctors were to deliver the test results that same day. I decided to wait there until the test results came. Greg looked too weak for what Jennifer described as fever. I wanted to know what was wrong with him. So Jennifer and I patiently waited for the doctor's test results. I even paid off the bills and bought them food to eat. I also gave Jennifer some money to keep in case they needed anything. I still saw him as my brother-in-law-to-be, even though I was thinking of ending things with Jennifer. Later that evening, the doctor arrived with the test results. He wanted to speak to Greg alone and reveal the results to him first, but Greg insisted that the doctor spoke in front of us because we were family. The test results practically took the breath out of me for a second. Greg had been diagnosed with an incurable STD. I was so shocked that I did not say a single word. I still remember how Greg screamed and asked the doctor if it was a prank. The doctor told him it was not, and that he needed urgent treatment. Greg practically broke into tears and pulled his hair. I expected the reaction from him, but I did not expect to see Jennifer fall to her knees and punch Greg on the legs. I still remember her exact words. "You monster. How could you? You knew you had STD, yet you slept with me all these months without protection?" I was shocked, to say the least. I did not understand what she meant at first until it all suddenly came rushing to me. Greg was not her brother. He was her lover. He was the man she had been cheating on me with. The man I just foolishly paid $5,000 for. I did not wait one more second there. I just left the hospital and drove home. The last time Jennifer and I had been intimate was over a year ago, and we always used protection, but I needed to be sure. I got tested that same day, and after a few days, I tested negative. That was 3 months ago. My family were the most surprised. They were thankful that I dodged a bullet with Jennifer. I later discovered that Jennifer had been stealing from my family's jewelry store. She was only with me for money. Everything was planned by her. Even the night at the party when she came to say goodbye to me and that Facebook friend request. She had been stalking my brother and I after she found out who our grandparents were. That night, when she saw my grandma call her grandchildren to the stage, she got the confirmation she needed. She could not get with my brother because he was dating her friend, so she chose me. We also discovered that the reason Jennifer transferred from her previous college was because she got into trouble with a loan shark. Thankfully for me, I escaped her evil ways and was able to find out who she was before it was too late, and I married her. I still get goosebumps when I think about how foolish I was. But hey, life is a lesson after all. Update. I never expected my story to get as much attention as it did. Thank you to everyone who read this awful experience of mine and dropped their thoughts. The witch. That's what you all call Jennifer, LOL. She really is one. It's been 6 months, and I later discovered that Jennifer got STD too. I don't know how serious hers is, but I was told she moved out of town. Apparently, Jennifer had been cheating on me from the very first day we started dating. Luckily for me, she only started dating Greg months after I stopped seeing her. Jennifer got her karma. I really dodged a bullet, LOL. I hope you all learned something from my traumatizing experience. I have learned a lot from it. Life's better now that I don't have an emotional abuser with me. Thank you, people on Reddit. Your comments were helpful. Happy Easter.
Yes, I had thought my husband didn't have what it took to be a man. He had always come off as timid and weak right from when we had been dating in college. I had overlooked it because I had thought he had come from money. He had looked rich from college. That's why I had set my eyes on him in the first place, but as we progressed to marriage, I didn't understand anymore. All the wealth he seemed to have displayed was no place to be found. My wedding hadn't been as lavish as I had dreamt it would be. His parents hadn't even shown. It was all a disappointment because, to be frank, I had married him because of his money and not any love. I could never love a man as timid and weak as my husband was. Yes, I was a gold digger, and I had been digging for gold with my husband. Now imagine my shock when the rich boy I had known before had to get a job and be submissive to a boss. It had been disgusting. Asterisk, wretch, asterisk. Before you all self-righteous bunch come under this post to yap at how selfish I was, I already know. I believe I was very clear when I said I didn't marry my husband for money. Anyway, watching my husband get a job and suck up to a boss when he once had money was downgrading. Before we had gotten married, my husband spent lavishly on me, on material things, basically anything to make me happy. Imagine my shock when I married him and now had to be, in his own words, managing. That hadn't been my style before I had gotten married, and I couldn't be expected to somehow adjust my lifestyle because of him. I had tried for the first 2 years. I thought he had been testing me or something, that he'll pop out one day and be like, I still had money to my name. I just wanted to see if you could stay with me when I had nothing. But as the days and months went by with nothing to show except my husband's shy and weak demeanor, and our ever-fluctuating checking account because I really couldn't be bothered as long as I was fine, I got tired. Yes, I got tired of my husband and I hopped on the ride for temptation. This came in the form of my husband's boss, who ticked every box I loved in a man. Strong, confident, powerful, dominant, and most importantly, rich. Whereas my husband cowered and ran to do his boss's every whim. I know that's the whole point here of working for someone, but watching him do it at their annual workers' retreat had done something to my ego. That's where all this started. My husband had told me that he had a party at his office that was for workers and their spouses to strengthen the family bond and whatnot between workers. So I had agreed to go because being in the spotlight is kind of my thing. The night had been going perfectly fine. Drinks, talk. My husband had even introduced me to a few of his colleagues. But then, as the night progressed, he was running out to get something or finish up something at his boss's request. So I had decided to go see what he was up to one of those times, and my mind was blown. You guys couldn't have imagined. To say I was shocked was an understatement. My husband's boss was giving my husband a scolding about how he couldn't do his job properly, and my husband stood there nodding his head like a sad lost puppy. I was flabbergasted and disgusted by my husband. Later, when the party was about to end, the boss decided to show his face and thank everyone for coming, so I decided to feel him up, you know what I mean? Turned out he was everything I liked in a man, and he had the hots for me. It was like a match made in heaven. Did I have second thoughts about cheating on my husband? Of course not. But I hadn't known it would come back to bite me in my butt. It was supposed to be a one-time fling, like an experience with a real man because I had missed that. But boy, was I wrong. Before I continue on, I want to give you all a little backstory to how my life was before I got married to my husband. My name is Nyla, and I'm 24 years old. My husband's name is Kevin, and he's the same age as I am. I was a partyholic. I loved parties, and that's how I met my husband. He had just been like me in college, attending parties, showing up and showing out and having no care in the world about grades, and the fact that we had come to college to bag a degree. Degrees were worthless when you had the money to do what you want, and I had the backing from my parents who thought I was studious as ever in school. Lol, imagine their shock when their daughter was dropping out of college and getting married. I had been their nightmare. Now, I don't think they want anything to do with me. Anyway, my husband was just like me in every regard. We matched and vibed, and he was rich as a, I don't know the expression to use here, but he was massive rich, if you get what I mean. His parents were in the wine business, and it was a generational wealth kind of thing. He had money to lavish, and I was his girl, so I was down for that kind of life. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and within 6 months, I was getting married. I was 23 when I had gotten married, and I thought that my life was going to be ease and soft life and trips and vacations and Birkins and Prada. Our wedding had been a flurry of activities. His parents hadn't attended because apparently they didn't like the fact that their son was getting married when he still had his life in front of him, and the fact that he was getting married to someone like me, no less. They weren't happy with the wedding, and they had not deemed it important to attend their son's wedding. Just as I hadn't deemed it important to go and see them as a dutiful daughter-in-law while I had been courting my husband. Lol. I didn't have the time for all of that then. I had been too busy dreaming of how I would spend my husband's money. We got a house at Pacific Heights and everything was going well. Then, imagine 2 months later, my husband coming to tell me that he would have to start working. My dreams shattered just like that, and I thought he had been playing with me. But truly, my husband started working and we started living from paycheck to paycheck. According to him, his parents had threatened to cut him off from the family if he didn't do something about HSI reckless spendings, and they seized his cards and every access to family funds. I couldn't cope. In my defense, I had tried to wing it out with him and, manage everything, but the resent was already building in my heart. My parents had already cut me off, and I needed to find a way to keep up with the things essential for my well-being. So you can imagine what went through my head when I saw my husband answering to someone else, and that someone else had something I needed. Of course, I had cheated, and it had been fun. I had sought out my husband's boss, and he hadn't known who I was. It had been a rush to fool to me. Some of you can't relate, and I'm not going to apologize for how I was. Like I had said, I had sought out my husband's boss one fateful evening after work, and I continued seeing him while my husband was there in the sidelines. Did I think I would get caught? I like to believe I was a cunning person, so I didn't think I was going to get caught. In fact, I hadn't been scared by that possibility. I wasn't planning on leaving a man who was far superior to my husband and provided for me all because of the fear of getting caught. Did you know my husband had the audacity to tell me to cut back on my spending? He had no right, so I wasn't at all scared of getting caught. And I had always been careful of my surroundings. When I was around my husband's boss, my phone was always off and in my bag, so there had been no chance of my husband calling me and his boss picking it up by mistake, or a chance of us running into my husband at a restaurant or hotel, because San Francisco was huge. There was no chance of also running into my husband's parents because they preferred to stay in their estate in Italy and not the fancy life of San Francisco. A win-win for me. See, I'd had everything totally secured. My husband's friends weren't my friends, and the only friends I'd had were college friends. And those ones didn't care about my behind ever since I dropped out of college. I had nothing to worry about. Yeah, I was as delusional as a tortoise thinking it could beat a cheetah in a race. My dream was upended once again right in front of my eyes. My husband's boss was the one to call me out first. No, now that I think about it, my husband had probably been the one that had found out first, but the chain of events from my perspective back then, it was my husband's boss that had called me out first. I didn't know how he got to find out I was married, but I remember I had gone to meet him during our scheduled meetup day, and he had thrown pictures from my wedding day in my face and demanded to know how I was married to the man that was his employee and why I was cheating on him. The poor man thought I had been a setup by my husband to undermine his competence in the office and say I was sleeping with his wife. I tried to explain to him that what he was thinking was way off from the real reason I had sought him out, but he threw a tantrum and threw me out of his house. Who knew dominating alpha men could throw tantrums? I learned that on that day. I had learned that and the fact that my soft life was coming to an end and how I needed to do something about it. God forbid I get a job, but maybe I could persuade my husband to talk to his parents and allow his cards to start working again. I mean, I could promise not to overspend, but I needed to spend or I would go crazy. Like I said before, I had never been more delusional. With the mindset of going to convince my husband to apologize to his parents so they'll let us have access to funds, I stepped into my home and saw my husband screaming and almost tearing his hair out. I knew I was in big trouble when my husband had set his red eyes on me and screamed. That's how I knew he had found out. Well, the screaming and the scattered pictures of me going into different hotels and restaurants with the man that was meant to be his boss. My husband had asked me why, and no sound had escaped from my mouth. I was, in fact I am, normally not the quiet one who would let go at the start of a fight, but I couldn't find the words to answer my husband's question. I had nothing, and he had left the house. My husband had come back a week later and everything resumed back in our lives. He had asked me no questions about it, and of course I had thought whether I should have apologized for what I had done. But I know a real man wouldn't like that, so I had left it unspoken. Everything went back to normal, literally. He was talking to me and asking me questions, but he hadn't asked the most important one, why I had cheated on him. Well, I didn't see any point in bringing up past pains over a month later, and decided to keep it to myself and ask what I had been meaning to ask before. If he could probably talk to his parents to put us back on the funds receivers list. I wasn't working, and before you come at me saying I shouldn't be proud of that, I didn't care about anyone's opinion back then, and it hasn't changed. And my expenses weren't balancing with his paycheck. I was a high-maintenance babe, and I didn't want to end that. So I had approached my husband and told him that he should consider going to apologize to his parents. That day, my husband lost it on me like I had never believed he could. According to him, if I just shut up and got a job to offset my expenses, then he wouldn't have to go back to his parents. Something about being a grown man and one stupid thing. Can you imagine that? Me, working, and him being grown? Heck, he wouldn't know anything about being grown if it was stuck to the fridge and made visibly clear. Besides, he hadn't married me for that. He had married me for the fun and the good time and the vibes. That's what I had ever been known for. So what was this talk of getting a job? Well, I told him what I thought of him and his stupid idea, and he told me he wouldn't have been in this mess if he hadn't married me. I had been hurt by that statement, and at that moment I thought I should prove him wrong, that I could make something out of my life. I dropped that idea about a second later, by the way, and had to find a solution to my dwindling checking account. So I did the most stupid thing. I went back to my husband's boss and received the backlash of my life and a threat to expose me to everyone I had known. Plus, he added he would make my life more miserable if he saw my face around his office ever again. I took my tail and skedaddled out of there like it was on fire. I hadn't begun to know the side effects of my actions until my husband decided he was finally tired of all my BS and got revenge on me. And it wasn't a one-time thing. It was like a well and carefully thought-out plan to make me lose my sanity and hate him and myself too. A month later, my husband came home and said he wanted to do something special for me. I was as shocked as you are now reading this. How did he want to do something for me after all the nagging I had given him and the cheating I had done? Yes, I had still been nagging him about going to talk to his parents and telling them to reconsider not giving us any money. He was their only Don, after all. Anyway, I thought this something special was a way of him telling me he had talked to them and they had reconsidered, and we had lavish money to spend again. He had told me to wear a special dress and look good, and I was spiked. I was happy that he had listened to me, and we were finally doing something that was fun ever since we got married. We got to the restaurant, and I ordered everything that could be ordered because this was a first time in a long while kind of outing for me. And also with my husband. You guys wouldn't guess the event that unfolded after we were done eating. He played the oldest trick in the book on me. Prior to me finishing my food, my husband got up and said he needed to use the restroom, that he'll be back in a jiffy. Unaware of what was about to happen, I nodded my head and continued enjoying my food and the ambiance of the restaurant because I hadn't been there. So imagine my shock when after about an hour the waiter handed me the bill and my husband was nowhere to be found. I had been played my own husband. Can you imagine being played by your spouse? If it had been a boyfriend or a guy I met on Tinder, that would have been easy to digest, but my husband, someone I was supposedly stuck to in good and in bad. I had tried calling his phone, but it had gone straight to voicemail, and the waiter was getting impatient because I had cleared my food and they had a number of people waiting to get in. That night, I did something I had never done in my life before. I had to borrow money from a college friend. My husband had abandoned me at a restaurant, and I had to get money somehow, or risk being sent to jail, and that's another thing I have never done. When I confronted him about it, he said he had an urgent work thing to do, that's why he ran out on me and couldn't get the bill. That was a cheap lie, and he knew it. He didn't even offer to make it up to me, and I began to suspect something was happening. As a result of that incident, I stopped talking to my husband and knew I needed to get something done to sustain myself and my needs, so I began working for the bakery down our block. No one should come at me for finally realizing I had done it back then to somehow gain my husband's trust again. When my husband saw what was happening, that I had gotten a job, he started leaving me a little money and my plan had worked. I quit the job, but always pretended to leave the house and walked down the block to the bakery while he left for the office. Once he was out of sight, I turned back and headed to the house. So with him finally giving me money, I thought we were on good terms again, so when he told me he wanted to take me shopping, I hadn't doubted that he wasn't genuine. We had gotten to the store and I had picked out the items I wanted and a little extra and had gone into the dressing room to try on the outfits. I hadn't even blinked when the dressing room curtain was swept open and about 3 women came at me telling me I was a thief and they were calling the police on me. I had no idea what they had been going on about, but apparently as I was being manhandled out of the store, my husband was nowhere to be found again. The women dumped my handbag on the floor and found a bunch of lingerie folded up together like someone had squashed it in there to frame me. That's how I spent the night behind prison bars. And I realized my husband was out to ruin me. He hadn't come to bail me out even though I had called his number countless times, and I had to wait till the next morning before I paid my own bail with the little money he had been leaving me and was released. When I got home, my husband was still nowhere to be found, but he had left a note saying that I was going to cry and beg in front of him for a divorce. I hadn't known that was going to be the story of my life until it actually happened. After the note, my husband didn't step foot into the house for a whole 2 weeks while I was nipping my nails away in worry and dread over what was to come. And it came. I got back from going to ask a friend to lend me some money, which had been unsuccessful by the way, and saw a party going on at my house in full swing. Like a classy dinner party, and I was walking in looking all tattered and tired of life. Then I realized it was a trap set by my husband the moment I set eyes on my mother. My husband was about to do the worst, but before I could run, he announced my presence to everyone in the room, and all eyes turned to me. There was no way to escape the shame and humiliation that came next as my husband started his speech about how we had met and whatnot. It was our 1-year wedding anniversary, and he was choosing to disgrace me in front of everyone that somehow knew me. A slideshow began playing in the space behind him. It started with cute pictures of us before and after marriage, and it ended with pictures of me cheating on him with his boss. I felt the eyes of everybody before I heard their gasps, and I had to hand it to my husband. My mother walked up to me and slapped me hard before leaving the party, and I saw my husband's mother planning to come and do same, but someone was holding her back. I walked up to my husband and told him that he was despicable for destroying my image when we could have settled it quietly, and he lost it again on me. He began telling me how I was the one that ruined his life and how he should have listened to his parents about me and my bad influence. He said I was the reason his parents had cut him off because they wanted him to learn the consequences of marrying someone like him, who was only after his money, and he had told them they should butt out of his business because he had believed I had truly loved him. Lamau, I had never heard from a more delusional person in my life. He told me I was a good-for-nothing leech, and I would never have anything good come from life for me because I had deceived him into marrying me, which I never did, by the way. He had been the one that wanted to marry. The insults I had gotten that day still stays with me till now, but the cherry on top of the cake that made me beg him for divorce so I could run away from the city was when my friends started calling me and saying they were seeing me on poster ads that I had herpes, and people needed to stay away from me. Apparently that had been my husband's boss doing because my cheating with him got him fired, but my husband had put him up to it. I begged my husband for divorce like I had never wanted anything more, and when I signed the papers, I got on my flight to New York from money that I had borrowed from someone who owed me big time. Yeah, so that's my experience, and I'm learning to be a better person after the whole thing, but I never knew my ex-husband could be so revengeful. It still shocks me, and I'll definitely have the shivers anytime I recall my experience with him.